Yes, I think the position of the intellectual is very important, and the artist in this question, because to give an overview of what happened in the last 100 years, or at least 80 years, 75 years from 1917, the end of the World War brought an enormous crisis for Europe, a moral and spiritual crisis. In other words, the whole system that brought about the war, a system of old politicians who are power mad, and behind them a corrupt and cynical economy, created the impression in the most sensitive and most clearly thinking people that it's another ancien regime which now finally failed here, and that I think the feelings of revolt, also evangelical expectations, and total cynicism, I think were really, that was the big wave of the feeling of the age immediately after the war. And Hungary, in that sense, was exactly the same as Europe, because Hungary really didn't have anything to win in this war. Hungary entered the war as an ally of Austro-Hungary, part of Austro-Hungary. Austro-Hungary did not really have anything to gain from the war. They got into this war in a very stupid way as allies of Germany, and they were. In the end, they were really held the greatest scapegoats and suffered the most. So Hungary suffered doubly at the end of the war. That is why when Count Mihály Károly, his government establishes the Hungarian Republic in 1918, there is a rather strong general feeling behind it. I mean, support. Soldiers who came back from the front, and young people mostly, of course, and the lower classes. And this slides over because of the failures of the Károly government by March into the Hungarian Soviet. And the Hungarian Soviet was a very unexpected thing. Most Hungarians didn't at all know who Béla Kun and his friends were. This was a handful of people, totally unknown up to that point, and the leaders of course came back from the Soviet Union, and Béla Kun himself regarded himself as the best disciple of Lenin, and he actually tried to work here according to the Lenin's blueprint, of lies and terror. They only had 4 months, but that was very little time, and at the outset, that's why at the outset, some of the best people of the young and middle generations of intellectuals and artists are supporters of the commune, or at least they participate in some of their activities. I mean, you can bring examples of people like Zoltán Kodály, the composer, who works together with Béla Reinitz, who was actually a communist, on a reform of Hungarian music education, because there was an insipid post-Viennese music academy in Budapest, and they wanted to reform the music academy there and outside the whole music education. And Kodály hoped that this can be done. Or if you take the two best writers of the age, who are in their middle lives, Mihály Babič, the poet, and Zsigmond Moritz, the novelist, they both are involved in various parts of cultural reform initiated by the communists. So, of course, the commune ends in a total failure, which is followed by the coming into Hungary of Admiral Horthy with the help of the English and French military. There are retaliations. For a while, there are paramilitary troops which take revenge on communists. But we have to remember that the communist terror, just in that short time too, was just terrible, and it left a very, very bad memory on the general Hungarian mind. That, I think, really explains the fact that it was not difficult to have a very, very, very fundamentally anti-Bolshevik stance between the two wars, for governments and the political elite in Hungary. Now, of course, among the intellectuals, the situation was different because after the First World War, the dramatic social differences were not really alleviated. I think the younger people, the intellectuals and the artists remained very much on the left. And the range of these people, went from moderate communists to moderate people on the right, but a very big new reformist center generation grew up from the mid-20s on, who played a more and more important significance in the life of the country, infiltrating the administration too, and I think reforms became slowly inevitable in the course of the 30s. Now, it is very important that the disillusionment among these people on the left took place in the same way as in Western Europe. In other words, it became more and more clear. The true nature of the Soviet Union became more and more clear from the early 30s onwards. Among the intellectuals and artists, there is very little sympathy for Nazi Germany at all, though in some political circles there is some. And we can say that although on the whole you might say that the general state of mind, the general mentality of the intellectuals and the artists is leftist in Hungary, and the general political mentality is much more in the right. You don't find really people on the extremes. This becomes very significant after what the Soviets call liberation in 1945, because I think as they are gradually seizing power from the background by 1948, they have to realize that they are really very, very much left on their own. The communists really, I think, govern the country as a very, very small minority. There is a tremendous growth of spontaneous social creativity in 1945. The democratic government is created, the democratic coalition government of the middle. This government is gradually, as I said, abolished, especially through the political police, which was very early, in late 1944, snatched by the Soviets. And one of the cruelest Stalinist dictatorships sets in Hungary. Now, what you have among the artists and the intellectuals of the left is very interesting. And I think it becomes truly obvious during the revolution of 1956. Those people among the intellectuals and the artists on the left who have communist leanings and who don't really notice early enough what the game was about, and they in some way serve the cultural needs of the Stalinist system. They are the ones who become the most fervent and radical reformers, starting with 1953, when the first Imre Nagy government is formed. And they are also the most dramatic opponents of the regime and the Soviets during the days of the revolution. And that is why, while most of the Hungarian intellectuals and artists are middle of the way in temperament, and even in the revolution, they have second thoughts about how far this whole thing may be successful, these former communists really, I think, go through a conscience purge and almost acting as martyrs in order to purify themselves from that vice of being, collaborators of Soviet power. And so this is briefly the very tragic story of the Hungarian left until 1956. And it is, of course, very typical of the Soviets that they were always more cruel with their former comrades than with their opponents. And that's why the people who go into prison, the writers, are the former communist novelist Déry, similarly, István Őrsi, poet who wrote an ode to Stalin, earlier, and you might name the other people, who received the harshest sentences. So I think I would stop here because time is going out, and I would rather take questions, and I would leave time also for questions to be given to Enikő Bolobás.
What is promised by the title of this panel is so much appetizer, and we got some of it, and so much more would be on it. And some of the, how shall I say it, being a diplomat and a scholar and a friend, the things that were missing, even though promised in the title. The economic session, it's a pity that I can't tell it to the speaker in his presence. The Soviet economy, the formalization and the performance, such facts have been left out. The name of Preobrazhensky, I haven't heard the name of Preobrazhensky. If the audience haven't heard it, it would have wanted to hear it. In the context of has been a topic here, namely, the Soviet system came into being and operated. And we heard a few statistics comparing 1913 and 13 or whatever. Those are all right, more or less, those comparisons, showing that during the Soviet governance, Russia has slipped significantly, fell behind herself. And there could have been those important elements that how Russia, because the end of the First World War, was a serious potential contender to the United States of America by the light of economic indicators. The two countries fell. How the Russian economic development, heavy industrialization by the Western capitalist investments. And then Stalin, when he mobilized his governance, 1928, wanted to prove that to himself, to his fellows, to the people, to the world, wanted to prove that the Soviet country is performing. And the statisticians showed that it doesn't, very much falling behind. Preobrazhensky, this economist, was the head of the economics statistical office. They made a thorough 3 years census, thoroughly by the knowledge, skills of economic statistics, thoroughgoing professional, and reported how much behind Russia fell during those years. What happened to Preobrazhensky? Stalin executed him. Then, a few years later, Stalin wanted to prove that now Preobrazhensky misrepresented the new statistical office, the head of, came up with somewhat similar results. That head was also executed because it didn't report the statistics what Stalin wanted to have. This kind of things are worth mentioning for the same of proportion, sense of proportions what we have. And another, just to dramatize these things, when later, decades later, after Stalin, came the surveyors, the new ones, who looked into the mirror. Khrushchev is not known as a reformer, but he did some interesting thing in that direction. Long list I used to write about this thing. Just one example here. Khrushchev wanted to dramatize to his fellows with whom he did the governance. And he had various features that Khrushchev had, among others would be humorous, used the humor. One of his examples, dramatizing that the Soviet Union is falling behind. And this was Stalin after Stalin, it was Khrushchev. That how much we waste potential and resources. Many of his examples, I'm just mentioning one. He made a big speech in a big factory, 3,000 workers, and they said, well, but this is not the way, comrades, to do economics and development, because there are here incompetence and cheating. Both, I give an example, said Nikita Khrushchev. There is in this lamp factory, that Ivan Ivanovich, the leader, the manager of the factory, and of course he's acting according to the plan, because we are a planned economy. And to perform the plan, we watch the indicators. This is a factory where we manufacture lamps, lighting. And Ivan Ivanovich redesigned the assembly lines and the production lines, and instead of, oh yes, the success indicator was weight. The weight of the lamps produced. Ivan Ivanovich, the factory director, redesigned the feature of the lamp. Instead of normal lamps and small lamps, he produced big lamps. And in light of those measures, the weight, successful factory, and for 10 years, by the time Khrushchev recognized that what is going on here, he collected substantial premium and rewards and Sakharov's orders. So when we talk about the Soviet society, it's good to have this tangible side. I have not been invited to be on this panel.
Well, but you are on it now, actually.
It's not appropriate to but this kind of things, insights, would shed light on what the real reasons were the collapse of the Soviet Union. We are, and the literature is full of these things. The American economists of Milton Friedman and hundreds and all over everywhere have calculated, have proven that it cannot work. Now, one more word about the success indicators of the Soviet Union.
Janos,
Because it was broke. Then by the 1930s.
Janos, may I?
One word.
Well, at the moment we haven't got a single question to Eniko for her particularly for her provocative argument. So I would be grateful if you could give this short last example.
The last sentence is to point that whatever success the Soviet Union accomplished, it was at the exploitation of labor. The wages were so much behind the marginal productivity of labor. The actual value what the labor produced it was not for living standard, not for whatever indicator, but invested into those where the Soviet Union was really conspicuous. Military and flying into the moon and this kind of. So those things were not the success of the Soviet Union, Soviet economy, but the failure of it. At the same time, successfully exploiting labor, underpaying labor, which was accumulation of gold plowed into military.
Yes.
Excuse me for the...
We really have to move on. So I'd like one question. Sándor, if you could make this brief.
A note of disappointment. Oh, Sándor. I'm sorry. I would like to address this to you, sir, concerning the commune. I mean, it would be time, don't you think, to recognize that there was nobody else but the communists who were willing to take that power, but were the only ones who were not responsible for the situation that they have found themselves to be in. The original ruling elite absolutely refused to participate in the governing of the country. The Social Democrats refused to take the government. What's more, when the war broke out with the Czechs and the Romanians, the army was waiting in Szeged doing nothing, refused to participate in the defense of the country. So would you please own up to the responsibility of the segments of society who helped to create the commune in Hungary?
Excuse me, I wanted to be short, and that's why I spoke shortly about the Soviet Republic, so-called Soviet Republic. Unfortunately, Count Károly had a Minister of Defense whose first statement said, "I don't want to see one more soldier in my life." That was his first sentence. In other words, Károly dispersed the remaining army, the remaining armed forces of Hungary. This is the truth. And of course, the whole government was very inefficient. In the meantime, of course, there were some very good forces in the Social Democrat Party, but they were infiltrated by the Béla Kun group very successfully and began to be portrayed as traitors of the proletariat and so on. But certainly the commune did one thing. When Romania and Czechoslovakia attacked Hungary, trying to get some more land beyond what they got, at no price in the Versailles treaties, or were going to get, because it was not yet there, then no doubt the communists had enough patriotic feeling, and this is very interesting, maybe they wanted to defend the state of the proletariat, but the people interpreted it as a patriotic goal, and some generals of the earlier Austro-Hungarian army came back, most notably, the famous general Stromfeld, and they were very efficient, and they ousted the Czech army from northern Hungary, and that's why that was the only front probably where the Soviet Republic gained some popularity. No doubt the former political elite was gathering in Vienna and trying to organize the country for the eventual and fast fall of the Republic of the Soviets. I don't know if I answered your question because I didn't really get the real direction of your question, but if you wanted me to extend on it a little, that is what I can say in the first instance, not wanting to to misuse your time.